Good morning, everyone. Larry Gutterman, president of Larchmont Temple Brotherhood, and it's great to have everyone here this morning for the Sunday event that Brotherhood is collaborating with the Temple on for Rabbi Gary Zola. I'll just mention a few upcoming Brotherhood events for the rest of the spring season. After today, a month from today, March 7th, we have a very own John Berger. We'll talk about his new book. Then following that, on April 18th, Josh Campbell, author of Crossfire Hurricane, will be presenting with us. Stay tuned. We're trying to make some arrangements regarding book availability, since normally if we were in person, we would do it as an in-person book signing. Following April 18th, on May 2nd, our very own Adam Deutsch and his colleagues working at the Georgetown Law School will present another event featuring some of their recent cases for the Innocence Project that the Georgetown Law School runs. I know Marty Tankaleff, who has now been at 2 events recently, will be participating in that. So we look forward to that. We may have another event or so in formation, so stay in touch. With that, I want to thank Rabbi Serkman for bringing Rabbi Zola to us this weekend. I thank Jane and the folks in the office for all that they do to arrange the mechanics of these events. To my executive vice president Marty Kannengeiser, who also plays a big role in the programming that we've had over the past year. And just a reminder, we are recording, and recording will be available afterwards for those who can log into the Temple website within the next day or so. So I think without further ado, I will turn it over to Rabbi Serkman, who will introduce Rabbi Zola. And just a reminder, you can send questions through the chat feature, and towards the end, we'll bring those up, or on occasion if the question is topical to what Rabbi Zola is talking about. Okay, Rabbi Serkman.
Thanks, Larry. So the great Pulitzer Prize winning author, former Harvard historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, put the power of history succinctly. She said, "As a historian, what I trust is my ability to take a mass of information and tell a story shaped around it." And so the secret magic of our master teacher at Larchmont Temple this weekend, professor of Reformed Jewish history at HUC in Cincinnati, Rabbi Gary Zola. Because as executive director of the American Jewish Archives, the largest repository of materials and documents of the American Jewish experience in the world, Rabbi Zola doesn't share data and documents. Zola tells stories, showing you the humanity behind the historic moment, the pain and purpose beneath the details that brings American Jewish history, our story, to life. It is such a treat, a Super Bowl Sunday treat, to welcome once again my friend, our teacher, quarterback of covenantal history, master teacher of olden times that link us to this very day, the inimitable Rabbi Gary P. Zola.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Serkman. I have to tell you, and I know every time I speak about Rabbi Serkman, it sounds like this is a quid pro quo, one good deed for another, but I could come back every week just to hear Rabbi Serkman's introductions. They're the best. I'm not so sure that they always, I'm deserving of them, but I can tell you I really appreciate it. Good morning to everybody. I have to say, I am so impressed that on a Super Bowl Sunday, folks would get up and want to do a little study. And so I'm really impressed with everybody. Although Larchmont Temple and the community at Larchmont has a reputation, you should know, for being one of our outstanding synagogues in American Reform Judaism. And I'm not just whistling Dixie. It really does have that reputation, and this is obviously testimony to that. I've had such a wonderful few sessions over the weekend, and I'm so grateful to be with you. I do want to just, for the few people who may be on this call or on this in the Zoom room, who haven't heard me speak already this weekend, I do want to say a few words about my friend Rabbi Serkman, who genuinely, I can't say this about every single congregation where I'm invited to speak, but in this case, Rabbi Serkman and I really have known each other most of our professional careers, and I don't think I need to tell the congregation what a treasure it has, not only in Rabbi Serkman, but in all of your Klei Kodesh and all of your clergy. I teach at a school that exists to provide American Jewry with its future leaders. And I don't think we should ever take that for granted. My own opinion is that, well, the great founder, person I refer to as the sainted founder of our movement in America, Isaac Mayer Wise, he had many good ideas, and some of his ideas weren't so good. But one of his most enduring ideas, one he fought for a quarter century to realize, was to create a school that would raise up and educate indigenous American Jews to lead the American Jewish community. He was convinced that if he relied only on European rabbis, that would be a mistake for our community. And I think that his wisdom has borne truth. And the wonderful, wonderful religious leaders that you have at your synagogue, and many people have, is something I hope we don't ever take for granted. In this community today in America, young people can, with talent and ability, can go in many different directions, and to devote one's life to doing what Rabbi Serkman does, and your other religious leaders, is really a blessing. It's a great honor, and it's, in my opinion, vital to the continuity of the American Jewish experience. So hats off, Rabbi Serkman, and to this congregation. Now, all of you know, I hope, probably says so on your stationery. By the way, I want to say good morning to one of the great teachers of American Judaism, one of the great scholars at the Hebrew Union College, Dr. Larry Hoffman, who's joining us. That's really a big honor to me when one of my teachers, one of the people who taught me, comes to listen to a session that I teach. So thank you, Dr. Hoffman and Gail. It's good to see you this morning. So it probably says on your stationery that all of you in this congregation, you're all members of what's called the Union for Reform Judaism. It's a Reform congregation, and probably some of you know that some of however you create your membership dues, whatever system you use, whatever some of that money that comes to the congregation goes to the Union for Reform Judaism to keep us connected to our religious denomination and to have strength in numbers. And I hope you know that some piece of that money that goes to the Union goes to the Hebrew Union College, which has today campuses in Cincinnati, New York, and Los Angeles, and Jerusalem. And that school is where I teach. I teach on the Cincinnati campus. And that was the original campus of the college's system, and it was established in Cincinnati in the year 1875. And that means we're getting close, friends, to the 150th anniversary of the founding of our union and the founding of our school. And since the American Jewish Archives, which is, you heard a bit about from Rabbi Serkman, is located on the campus and is a part, literally a division of the Hebrew Union College. It's not separate in any way. It's part of that college. I think it's fair to say that all of you, in one way or another, are on my board of directors, because if you're members of Larchmont Temple, you help to support the American Jewish Archives in a meaningful way. And I wanted today, my proposition today is to show you a little bit about what you have in which you've invested, and to hopefully to make you proud of the investment that you and so many people around North America have placed in us. Because, you know, friends, and I'm going to get right to my teaching in a second, but the truth is that a school consists of three things. Is most important. You can't have a school without students. This can't exist without students. You can't have a school without teachers. And you can't have a school without the resources, the academic resources that are necessary for students and teachers to function. Basically, your library, the resources that come with that are very, very important to what we call the academic resources. So I want to show you about a resource that is not only for the students of the Hebrew Union College and not only for the teachers of the Hebrew Union College, but is actually for the whole world. And you, I hope, when we're done today, will take some pride in knowing that you and our whole movement have helped to create what I'm about to show you. So with that, I am going to now share my screen. And I'm going to remind you, for those of you who don't do this often, that when I share my screen, there'll be a sort of a vertical line between the people you see and the documents that I'm going to show you. And you can put your mouse on that vertical bar and slide to the right or to the left. You can see more of the document or less of the document if you want to see more people. I tell everybody, I can see all of you because I'm using two screens. So no one should stick their tongue out at me, because I will be able to see you even if you don't think you're being seen. So I'm about to share my screen, and hopefully all will go well. And now you should all see the beautiful sketching of the Cincinnati campus, and the building to the right, the building you're looking at on the left is the classroom building in Cincinnati. And the building on the right is the original library building that was created when this campus was built. And that's where the American Jewish Archives is located. And the American Jewish Archives is not as old as the college. It is about to celebrate its 75th birthday. So it's about half as old as our college. And you're looking at my teacher, Jacob Rader Marcus. Dr. Marcus founded the American Jewish Archives in the year 1947. He was in his sort of moving closer to 60 years of age when he started the American Jewish Archives. And Dr. Marcus is known even to this day as the Dean of American Jewish Historians, because he's the first American-born scholar trained with a PhD. He earned his PhD at the University of Berlin, and he began as a historian at the Hebrew Union College. He taught Jewish history from biblical times unto modern history, and only in the late 30s and 40s did he begin to focus his attention exclusively on the history of Jewish life in America. Dr. Marcus was a remarkable man. I know Dr. Hoffman knew him. He's famous for many things. He said many memorable lines, but when you walk into the American Jewish Archives and you look in the lobby, these words are emblazoned over the doorway of the college: a people of the American Jewish Archives, a people that is not conscious of its past can have little hope for its future. This is how the American Jewish Archives looked in 1947. Dr. Marcus literally took a few archival documents that had been in the college's library, and he brought them over to that building, which was no longer being used as a library. They had already built a second library, and this is all we had in the year 1947. You heard Rabbi Serkman say that today the American Jewish Archives is the largest catalog collection of documentary evidence in the world. So I'm happy to show you what it looks like today. This is a sort of cartoonish rendition, but this is exactly how it looks. There's the old building coming up on your left. There's the main entrance. And this is 3 interlocking buildings that contain the records of the American Jew, available and accessible to all. This is really the actual picture of the American Jewish Archives. One day, I hope to be able to welcome all of you to see it with your own eyes and to come inside and enjoy. Now, what we do at the American Jewish Archives is we collect documents of all sorts. I'm going to show you all different kinds today, because a document is not just one letter or a piece of paper. There are many different kinds of documents. And as Rabbi Serkman suggested by reading a quote from my friend, Doris Kearns Goodwin, I actually had an opportunity to meet Doris Kearns Goodwin on many occasions, because, as you know, she and I were both working on Abraham Lincoln at the same time. I don't understand how it came to be that only 35 people read my book and probably 3 million read her book, but she's a great gal and a terrific scholar and a wonderful human being, she and I, believe it or not, actually ate at Skyline Chili here in Cincinnati together. So I'll tell you more about that. But what she was saying, Rabbi Serkman quoted her by pointing out that documents are the building blocks of history. In other words, you create the stories of the past, you reconstruct them on the basis of documentary evidence. Now, this we all take for granted, but we shouldn't take it for granted, because when you recreate the past on the basis of just memory, or on the basis of a legend, or on the basis of what people sort of pass on from generation to generation, you have a recollection, but you don't necessarily have scientific history. The great German historian von Rake is the man who really created this method, which is today largely accepted. The idea that we reconstruct the past as best we can based on actual evidence, so that you're not just remembering something that somebody told you, but you're actually basing your reconstruction of what happened on documents. So today I want to show you some of our most famous documents. We have the entire collection of the World Jewish Congress. And in the World Jewish Congress is a document that is our most famous document of all. And I'm going to start with that document because it is very famous, and you could, those of you who have 1 or 2 computers going at the same time, you could actually look it up and Google it while I'm talking. The person you're looking at is a lawyer. His name was Gerhard Riegner. I had the privilege of meeting him. He received an honorary degree at the Hebrew Union College. You're looking at him on the left as a young lawyer in Geneva, Switzerland, when he was first working for the World Jewish Congress. And this is how he looked when he came to the Hebrew Union College to get his honorary degree. Regner's job for the World Jewish Congress during the late 30s and the early 40s, it was his job, among many other things, to keep an eye on and report what exactly was happening, what the Nazis were doing to the Jewish community of Germany and then ultimately of Europe. And he would send reports to headquarters in New York to help the leadership of the World Jewish Congress understand what it was that was happening to the Jewish community in Europe. What he didn't know is a terrible, horrible event which was taking place in this building. Does anybody, I can see you folks nice and clear, does anybody know what that building is? Has anybody been there?
Is that Wannsee?
That is Wannsee. That's exactly correct. For those of you who haven't been to Wannsee, Marlene, may I call you Marlene? Okay. Marlene, if she's been there, will tell you that it's one of the most jarring experiences because this beautiful villa, if you continue to walk down the sidewalk you see in the picture, just away from the building, you would confront a beautiful lake. It's one of the most bucolic scenes. Wannsee is a suburb of Berlin. It's about 20 minutes by train, not too far. And that's where people would go out into this suburban area where there were beautiful villas. You could sail on the lake. And this was actually, this stands as it looks, this is how it looks today. And this is where the SS, the Nazi SS leadership would go on the weekends for, I guess, when they needed a break from all their pillaging and killing, they would relax here in this villa. And it was in this villa that you're looking at in 1941, pardon me, in 1942, in January, that there was a group of people, what you might call the second echelon of Nazi leadership. Here you're looking at them. They all gathered in that villa, and their job was to actually put together the plan that would make it possible for the mechanized technological extermination of the Jewish people in Europe. And they met in that villa. They had been given direct instructions from the highest quarters, from Hitler and from the highest level of the leadership of the Nazis, to quickly develop a plan wherein the Jews that had been concentrated in camps could be eradicated, murdered. You see some of the prominent names of people who were at that meeting. This man, whose name is familiar to all of us, Eichmann, Adolf Eichmann, he kept minutes of that meeting, very copious minutes. And if you go to Wannsee today, it's a museum, and you see the original minutes. And I couldn't help but I read and read and read when I visited Wannsee. It's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. They are talking about human beings literally as if they were talking about delivering potatoes and what needed to be done to get potatoes from one place to the next. And it's chilling. And these minutes that Eichmann took have been translated into many languages. So people come to actually see the space where this horrid idea was hatched. This man, Heydrich, was probably the most powerful man in the group and very hated he was very high up in the Nazi administration. He was actually murdered. He was assassinated in Prague not too long after that, for which Hitler wreaked a great deal of revenge. Well, our friend Regner hears about this meeting in March of 1942. Remember, the meeting took place in January. And in March, Regner hears from an informant that he paid about this meeting. And he decides he has to tell the World Jewish Congress in the United States in New York. Rabbi Stephen Wise, the president of the World Jewish Congress, needs to know about what's going on. And so he composes a telegram that he wants to inform him of what he has heard from this paid informant, whose name we do not know to this day. And he goes to the General Counsel in Geneva, and he says to the General Counsel, I want to send this through the military attaché, because the war had already was on, and so there's no way that they could send from Europe through the United States Postal Service or through Western Union. It had to be sent through the military attaché. To make a very long story short, it takes Regner about 4.5 months to negotiate with the Consul General in Geneva, the American Consul General, to send this telegram, because the Consul General fundamentally does not believe what's in it. The story, that the words that are in it are so fantastic that he cannot believe that it's true. And so there's a great deal of negotiation that goes back and forth, additional information. Finally, the telegram is sent in August, and I'm going to read the telegram and show it to you right now. It's a 2-page telegram. And at first, I have to show you page 2, because this is key to the story. Page 2, you see it's sent by Silverman. And you are probably saying to yourselves, I don't get it. Zola's been talking about Regner. How come this telegram is coming from a man named Silverman? Well, Mr. Regner sent the telegram to 2 people, fortunately, at the same time. He sent it to Stephen Wise, the president of the World Jewish Congress, and then he sent it to a man named Samuel Silverman, who was the president of the World Jewish Congress in Great Britain. And Silverman was also a member of parliament. This is key to the story. So what happens is, it's sent, it gets to the State Department in the United States, and it's never found. In other words, Stephen Wise does not receive this telegram. Instead, the telegram is sent to Britain, the same exact telegram. And because Silverman was a member of parliament, after 2 weeks delay, they send it to Mr. Silverman. And Mr. Silverman, the MP, he sends it exactly, he dictates it on a Western Union telegram from Great Britain to the United States. He communicates it to Rabbi Stephen Wise. That's the telegram that you're looking at. And now it'll make sense to you. I'm going to read it. You can follow along. The first line is from Silverman. He's explaining the first line. I have received through the Foreign Office, that's the British Foreign Office, the following message from Regner. Stop. Now from here on, it's the same text, and I'll tell you how I know that. It's the same text that Wise would have received. Received an alarming report that in the Fuhrer's headquarters, a plan is discussed and under consideration that all Jews in countries occupied or controlled by Germany, numbering 3.5 to 4 million, should, after deportation and concentration in the East at one blow, be exterminated to resolve once and for all the Jewish question in Europe. This is page 2. The action is planned for autumn. It is autumn, as you know, by the time this telegram arrives. And We now know, by the time this gets to the United States of America, by the time Stephen Wise sets his eyes on this, almost 1 million Jews have already lost their lives. And then it says, the reports planned for autumn methods under discussion include prussic acid. They got that right. We transmit this information with all necessary reservation, as the exactitude cannot be confirmed, but the informant is stated to have close connections with the highest German authorities, and his reports are generally reliable. Stop, inform, and consult New York. And the last line is Silverman again, adding on. Silverman says to Rabbi Wise, he says, the British Foreign Office has no information bearing on or confirming this story. That's a lie. We now know that that was a lie. And in fact, the end of the story goes like this. Wise never gets his telegram. He goes to the State Department. He says, I received this telegram from Silverman. What do you know about this? The State Department responds to him and says, Rabbi, we don't know anything about this. Let us look into it. That's a lie. We now know that's a lie. 6 weeks later, 7 weeks later, they go back to Wise and they say, Rabbi, we've looked into it, and your worst fears are true. This apparently is what's happening. Stephen Wise organizes a major news conference, and he announces this fact that the Jews are being exterminated. This is he organizes this the end of November, and the news conference is December the 3rd, 1942. Bear in mind, Wannsee takes place in January. And so he delivers a major news conference. He tells this information that he has received. And of course, if you want to know the rest of the story about that, you have to read either the Laurel Leff's book about the times, or Deborah Lipstadt's book, of course, because the New York Times and many of the major newspapers placed this story on page 10. And as we know, the urgency of this story never rose to be what you would call a national American calamity. It was always left for a 2 or at least a year and a half. It was left as sort of a mystery as to what really was going on in Europe. It wasn't until 44 that the United States organizes the War Refugee Board. At any rate, the end of the story is this. What happened to Stephen Wise's telegram? Where did it go? If it was sent to him, how come we don't have it? And the answer to the question we find from a great scholar at American University, now retired, a man by the name of Richard Brightman, who writes on the Holocaust. And he tells the story in a preface to his book that came out in 1995. He tells a story that he's going to the National Archives every year for 2 or 3 years to do research on his book. And of course, as you all know, every year, something that was held in confidence in our government archives for 50 years has to be released by law if it isn't a national a secret or security issue. And so he tells a story about how he comes back, and he knew, of course, about the Cincinnati Regner telegram, and he was writing about it. And what a surprise, in the year 1993, they bring him the original copy of the telegram, which now, 25, 30 years after that event, we know more about what happened. It was not delivered, not because Franklin Roosevelt knew about it, not because the Secretary of State, Cordell Hull, or anyone else knew about it. It was held by middle management, State Department individuals who were not confident that it was accurate and were worried about handing it over to a civilian, Rabbi Wise, who was pretty famous in New York and might circulate as as he ultimately did. And they thought, well, we'll hold on to it. And when the State Department confirmed that what he already knew was a fact, there was no point in giving him the telegram. So the telegram remained in the State Department in a file until 50 years later. So the two originals exist, one in the National Archives of the United States and the other in the American Jewish Archives. Now, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to take them. Otherwise, I'm going to go from what is the most serious of matters, this calamitous event that was forever changed the psyche of the world, what we call today the Holocaust. I'm going from that to something more lighthearted. You're looking at a building that doesn't stand anymore. This is a building in Cincinnati. It was in Cincinnati, and it was called it's the Temple Building of B'nai Israel. Today, it's known as the Rockdale Temple. It was in the 19th century located on a street called Mound Street, and therefore it was nicknamed the Mound Street Temple. It's in the vestry rooms of this building, which no longer exists. It's gone completely. That the first class of the Hebrew Union College took place in Cincinnati. And we actually have a picture of that room. There it is. If we didn't keep this picture, there'd be no proof or no visual way of appreciating exactly where the first group of students ever to study at the Hebrew Union College met. That's what it looked like. And sometimes they met at a building that does still stand. And this is a very old sketching of what was called the Jewish Temple on Plum Street, not on Mound Street. This is where Isaac Mayer Wise preached. And that building is still very much in existence. And here's a beautiful photograph of the interior of how it looks today. That's the first home of the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati in the year 1881. The college bought a mansion, and they converted that mansion into a school building. That building is gone too. And if we didn't have by the way, if you want a proof that it was the home of the Hebrew Union College, I'm going to blow up that doorway as best I can so you can see the writing over the door, the Hebrew Union College. This is where the college met before it moved up to the current campus in 1912. Now, there were 4 graduates after 8 years of study, and here they are, the first 4 graduates of the Hebrew Union College. The year was 1883. They started studying in 1875, and now it was time for the first ordination of the first 4 American-trained rabbis in Cincinnati, Ohio. And that was in July of 1883. And of course, after the ceremony at that beautiful Plum Street Temple I showed you, you had to have a party. And so the party was going to be held here at this building, which was called the Highland House Hotel. This no longer stands, but it was located in what's called Mount Adams in Cincinnati, which is a beautiful overview of the Ohio River. So you can see from this picture I'm showing you that there was a veranda, and people could go out from the dining room and walk on a big, large veranda where the fence was, and you could look over that fence and see the beautiful Ohio River as it was flowing. And on July the 11th, 1883, after the ordination, a big party was held here for the members of the Union of American Hebrew Congregation. All the congregations that helped to create the Hebrew Union College met in Cincinnati to celebrate that ordination. And they had a big fancy dinner at this hotel that night. There were over 250 guests. Many of them had come from all over America. And remember, They were not all of these people were rabbis. Only a handful of them were rabbis. Most of them were the lay leaders, the members of the congregation who supported the union and who were part of what was then the Reform or the liberal branch of American Judaism. And when they sat down at their table, they found in front of them a teeny little menu, which was, of course, since it was a fancy dinner, you had a little menu that told you what you were about to eat at this banquet commemorating the first ordination. And there it is in front of you, banquet in the honor of the delegates of the Council of the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, Highland House, Cincinnati, Ohio. So what did they have for dinner that night? Well, thanks to this document, we can tell you exactly what they had. I'm going to open it up for you. And there's the inside of the menu. And lo and behold, look at the menu that they ate. We can see they started out with little neck clams. How do you like that? Well, if you're going to start off with little neck clams, why not have some soft shell crabs and then a little salade de shrimp? But that's not all. Grenouille. Does anybody know what that is? Anybody speak French? Okay.
Frog's legs.
Who said that?
Adrian.
Good
Frog
for
legs.
you.
Yeah,
Exactly
frog legs.
right. And I'm sure you all know, because we're all pious Jews, that frog's legs is not one of the creatures that we would normally be eating. So they had creme de la frog legs poured onto it looks like cauliflower, creamed frog leg spread over cauliflower. And the main course, of course, was chicken. So if you're going to have chicken, why not have ice cream for dessert? Now, the question is, by the way, this is the second most famous document. To the best of my knowledge, friends, this is the only such copy of this document that exists, the only one. And it is known in history as the Treifa banquet menu. If you come to Cincinnati, I'll show you the real McCoy, but this is a pretty nice digital copy of it. And the question everybody's probably asking right now, if they're not being flooding the chat line, is why would a rabbinical seminary serve up such a treif meal at an ordination party? And that's a very good question. I happen to have the answer to the question. The answer to the question is that you have to remember in 1883 that the Eastern European migrants had not really come to America in the numbers that would occur a decade over the coming decade. American Jewry was largely dominated at that time by the German Central European Jews who had come here already in the 1840s and 50s. And they had Americanized. And they did not view eating what we would call fruit de la mer. They didn't consider that to be forbidden. And these were lay people, mostly lay people at this gathering, not a pile of rabbis. And so this is the way they ate. It was considered, if you take a look at the menu, you can see after every course, they had different liquor, they had cigars. I mean, this was what you would call a fancy schmancy meal. And we know for a fact, this is how Jews ate. This is how they ate. And then you say to me, how do you know that, Zola? Well, I can prove it because here are the documents to prove it. Here's from 1889 or 1886, just 3 years later. This is a banquet from B'nai Brit that was held in a hotel. As you see, I'm going to blow up the menu for that, just big enough so you can see. They start out with turtle soup and also oysters. If you think I'm making that up, I'll show you another menu. Here's a golden wedding anniversary that took place in 1895, not too long after the Treifa banquet menu. These couple was married in 45. They're celebrating in 95. Let's see what they had at their menu. Oh, they start with oysters on the shell. And what about even at the Hebrew Union College? The alumni of the Hebrew Union College had a 70th birthday party for Dr. Moses Meltziner, one of the faculty members, in 1898. What did they eat? They start with oysters. So all I'm saying is this idea that Isaac Mayer Wise did this in order to make a point, or that, as sometimes people say, oh, the caterer wasn't Jewish. The caterer was very much Jewish. And that this idea that this menu would have been a shock to the people who went to this event, all of that, I'm sorry to say, is a Baba Misa. This is the way the American Jew ate in the 1880s and 90s. And all of that would change with the influx of the Eastern European Jews who would renew in America an interest in kashrut. So now that we're talking about Stephen Wise, the recipient of the Regner telegram, some of you heard me play a selection from a great collection we have of Rabbi Wise. I'm going to quickly tell you this story as quickly as I can, because I see how quickly time is flying. Dr. Hoffman's going to love this story, especially since he knows the college the way I do. The first week that I was the director of the American Jewish Archives, I get a call. Literally, I'm in my desk one week, and this is in 1998, and I get a call from a wonderful fellow who was the librarian of the New York campus, Dr. Phil Miller. And Dr. Miller was calling me just to congratulate me on my new position at the college and to wish me well. And we were schmoozing. I knew Dr. Miller. And at the end, he says, oh, by the way, he says, we have in the closet here at the New York campus, we have hundreds and hundreds of aluminum albums. And I don't think you can play them anymore. They say something on them about Stephen Wise. And I don't think they are doing any good in the library here. I'd like to ship them to the American Jewish Archives. Now, as soon as I heard that, I thought to myself, my good friend, Dr. Miller, is using this opportunity, since I'm a novice, I'm a neophyte at the American Jewish Archives. He's going to use this opportunity to ship a whole pile of garbage from his closet to my closet in Cincinnati. And so I said, Phil, thank you so much. I said, don't send the collection. I said, just send one album and send it to me, and let me make the decision as to what it is and whether or not it should come to Cincinnati. I was confirmed in my suspicions that there was something nefarious going on, because literally in a week's time, a Jiffy Pack arrived, and inside were these albums. Now, nothing, and Dr. Hoffman can confirm this, nothing at the Hebrew Union College ever happens that fast unless there's something peculiar going on. So I just simply put that Jiffy Pack on my shelf, and it sat there for 6 months. I didn't even listen to it. One night I'm brushing my teeth, and from the sink, I can hear the TV is on, and I'm listening to Ted Koppel. You remember Nightline? Okay, Ted Koppel's on Nightline, and this is what I hear him saying as I'm brushing my teeth. He says, ladies and gentlemen, this evening, you're going to hear something remarkable. He says, this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to give you the opportunity to listen to the voices of people who actually were slaves in America, and they will recollect what they felt like when they heard at the end of the Civil War that they were free. Ted Koppel continues, how are we going to do that? He says, we're going to do that because in the 1920s and 1930s, these slaves were now octogenarians, nonagenarians, centenarians, and anthropologists recorded their voices, their stories, on aluminum albums. And these albums are very difficult to play. But now, because of digitization, we can digitize the recordings, clean up the background sound, computerize it, and their voices come back to life. Well, the next day I go to my office and I look and I have that same album. So I called up ABC. I found out where they digitized their album, and I digitized their album. Today, I'm going to play for you the first album that Dr. Miller sent to me. This is the first thing I heard of Stephen Wise's voice. It's almost over 80 years old. It's been brought back to life, and I'm going to tell you about it in a second. The end of the story is, of course, I sent one of the archivists from Cincinnati to drive to New York and take the whole collection and bring it to Cincinnati. But I did a good deed because, as I told Rabbi Serkman, we have now digitized every single one of 172 sermons that don't exist anywhere else except on these audio recordings delivered at Carnegie Hall by none other than Stephen Wise from 1934 to 1942, containing unbelievable material. I'm going to play for you this first sermon I listened to, just a clip of it. It's a sermon delivered 12 days before Pearl Harbor. And he, in 1941, it's actually 1940, Wise is predicting what will happen to the Jew during the war. And he gives a beautiful three-point sermon. I've listened to the whole thing. It's unbelievable. And he says that the Jew is going to be, during World War II, a soldier. The Jew is going to be a sufferer, and the Jew is going to be a symbol. Soldier, sufferer, and symbol. I'm going to play just a clip for you now of the last point that he makes, that the Jew is a symbol. I want you to hear this. I'm stopping to share for just one moment because I want to make sure I've clicked all of the proper boxes, which I have not. So you wouldn't have heard his sound. So now I'm going to do that. And I'm going to now, wait a minute. Just a second. What did I do here? Hold on. Let me stop sharing for 1 minute. Okay. Okay, now we should be okay now. Okay, you all see that picture of Stephen Wise again? Okay, now we're ready to go. You should be able to hear this. Let me know if you can't.
Story of Rabbi Werner in one of the neighboring countries of Germany, who was captured by the Gestapo, tortured and mocked, and finally, for it was the Sabbath, these Gestapo agents turned to Rabbi Werner and they force him, after stripping him of his garments, tear the wedding ring from his hand, teeth which are not even capable of sustaining the effort. And then, after these false teeth of this aged rabbi have been ground under the heels of a stormtrooper, they turn to him and say, "Today is the Sabbath. You are going to preach today. You will preach your sermon to us." Rabbi Werner preaches the sermon to them as they interrupt him with blows and kicks. And the subject of his address that day The sermon he would have preached to his congregation was upon the theme, all men are human, sinners, wrongdoers, the apparently wicked and ruthless and cruel, still they are human. Finally, as the essence of what the rabbi is saying breaks into their consciousness, the stormtroopers, overwhelmed with viciousness and guilt, turn to him and say, "And are we too human? You consider us human also?" And they rain blows and kicks and cruelties upon him. Answer, they say, are we human? And in one of the great moments of Jewish history, Rabbi Werner turns to them in the midst of all their cruelties and horrors heaped upon him, and answers in the essence of the Jewish spirit, "Doch, doch, even you are human, despite all that they may do, despite all that they might do." In other words, the Jewish understanding that there is humanity which cannot be destroyed in any man will not be broken. Herein the Jew rises victorious above 1,000 Gestapos and 10,000 Nazis, triumphs as it triumphed through ages of persecution past.
It's really something, isn't it? And just to point out that when you teach people, of course, I could show them that speech in writing on a text, but it's an entirely different matter to hear it as it was delivered almost literally 80 years ago. Imagining yourself sitting, listening to those words. So I want to quickly go on and show you a few other things. Just a few days ago, we marked, and in many congregations all across America, we still marked the tragic events of the sinking of the Dorchester. Now, I don't know how many of you know this story, but this was a transport ship, which means this was a ship during World War II that was used to carry soldiers from one place to another. So it often would have sailors, soldiers, Marines. And in this case, the Dorchester was carrying 4 chaplains, a rabbi, 2 Protestant ministers, and a Catholic priest. And it was somewhere not too far from Greenland when it was torpedoed by the Nazis in the night at 1 a.m, and it went down, and many soldiers lost their lives. All 4 of the chaplains perished. Those soldiers who survived the sinking of the Dorchester told the heroic story of the 4 chaplains who all stood together, gave their life jackets and their gloves and their coats to enlisted men who were going overboard in lifeboats. And these 4 chaplains who worked together and went down praying the Psalms together were known as the 4 chaplains. And during World War II and for many years after, this was a very important symbol of the uniqueness of America. These are they, the 4 chaplains who went down on the Dorchester, and the man who's the second from your right is Rabbi Alexander Goody, who was ordained at the college in Cincinnati in 1930s and perished on the Dorchester. We have at the American Jewish Archives some original letters from soldiers who actually survived the Dorchester and talked in their letters about Rabbi Good, or Goody, as it was spelled. And I can't, we don't have time to read it in detail, but I'm just going to highlight this soldier who, as you can see, his name is Mahoney, John J. Mahoney. I suspect this was not a member of the tribe. Mr. Mahoney was so moved after he survived, he writes a letter to another chaplain to explain what Rabbi Good did. And he basically says that when he came up to try to get on a lifeboat, he realized he had left his life preserver, he left his gloves, he left everything below in the turmoil, and he comes up on deck and he sees, as he says, he sees Rabbi Good. He says, "I'm going to go back and get my gloves." The rabbi says, "Look where the arrow is." The rabbi says, this is all in the letter. You see the script there on the right. He says, "Never mind. I have two pair, and I'll give you one of my pair." And then he peeled his gloves off his hands and he gave them to me. And in a few minutes, I was overboard myself and I was swimming around. And then I landed in a lifeboat, and which was awash. It was about a foot, or there was about a foot or less of water, and the ends of the boat and so forth, that kept the boat from going under. And he then says, "Now, as the official temperature of the water was 30 degrees, then I am positive that I never could have held on for over 8 hours if my hands had not been covered. So I would like to credit Chaplain Good for helping save my life." These are the documents that help us to retell the story. I don't know how many of you remember this TV show from the 50s, Edward R. Murrow's very famous Person to Person. Sometimes even television shows can be historical. Why? Because it gives us an opportunity to actually see some of America's greatest rabbis. In 1954, none other than Abba Hillel Silver, the famous rabbi for Cleveland, was his guest. I'll just play it, a little piece of it for you.
Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver is one of America's outstanding spiritual leaders. For 37 years, he has been rabbi of the Temple in Cleveland. That's the largest Reformed Jewish congregation in the country, with 2,500 families. Rabbi Silver is also an author, a lecturer, and a civic leader. He helped form the first community chest in America, right there in Cleveland, and he aided in getting the first state unemployment insurance law approved in Ohio. Dr. Silver has also given much of his time and life to Zionism and the establishment of the new state of Israel. Rabbi and Mrs. Silver live in this house in Shaker Heights, a suburb of Cleveland. It's 2 stories high, has 9 rooms, which seems a few too many for the Silvers since their sons, Daniel and Raphael, have moved away. The Silvers have lived here for 12 years, and the Temple is not far away, about 10 or 12 minutes rides into Cleveland. Shalom Alakim.
Aleichem Shalom, Mr. Morrow.
Good evening, Dr. Silver.
Welcome to our home.
Thank you, sir. I haven't been to Cleveland since that debacle on the Diamond when the Giants beat the Indians. Has your town recovered from the shock?
Well, you know, our period of mourning is 30 days. 30 days are over, and we are now hoping that the Indians will come to life next year.
Well, Rabbi Silver, do you have much time for sports?
Well, I'm afraid not. Not much time.
Well, let's check with Mrs. Silver, could we?
Yes, certainly. This is Mrs. Silver, Mr. Morrow.
Good evening, Mrs. Silver.
I'm delighted to see you, Mr. Murrow. Welcome to our home.
Thank you.
So this goes on. It's a 15-minute segment, but just think how valuable it is to the students who are in my class. Abba Hillel Silver is, in a sense, as old as Abraham Lincoln. To be able to actually hear his voice, to hear how he speaks, to see how he walks, to look at how he dresses is really a gift to being able. Now, I just played a clip of it, but I can tell you there's content in this exchange between these two men, because he later speaks about Israel, which is only, of course, a few years old. And he talks about his views on Israel and what Israel means to him and should mean to America. Those of you Friday night who heard Rabbi Serkman speak so beautifully and say so many meaningful iyunim, thoughtful thought pieces in between our prayers on Erev Shabbat, he actually quoted Dr. Martin Luther King. And those of you will remember that Rabbi Serkman quoted a famous phrase where he says Dr. King asked people to be maladjusted. And this quote, which he delivered in synagogues, Dr. King, very often, happens to be in one of the earliest recordings of Dr. King speaking at a synagogue. We have a copy of that at the American Jewish Archives. And I want to play the quote that Rabbi Serkman read, except you're going to get to hear it delivered in the voice of Dr. King himself, who is speaking at Temple Beth Emet in Evanston, Illinois, in the year 1958, just shortly after the end of the Montgomery bus boycott and long before Dr. King became quite as famous as he would. He was just beginning his journey and fight for civil rights, and he would speak at synagogues. We have several recordings of him speaking at synagogues, and we have transcripts as well. So just a quick clip, because I promised I would bring to life Dr. King actually saying the words that Rabbi Serkman read to the congregation this past Friday.
But I want to say to you that there are certain things within our social system to which I'm proud to be maladjusted, and to which I call upon you to be maladjusted. I never intend to adjust myself to the evils of segregation and the crippling effects of discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to the madness of militarism and the self-defeating effects of physical.
We stopped hearing.
I call upon you to be maladjusted. Yes, as maladjusted as Amos, who in the midst of the tragic injustices of his day
Rabbi Zola, there's no sound.
I think Rabbi Zola froze. Let me call him. I'm going to give Rabbi Zola a quick call.
He froze. That's terrible.
Jesus Christ.
I can't have that video. So Rabbi Serkman, in the meantime, when a rabbi actually freezes, what is the Jewish custom?
Rabbi Zola is coming back. He should be back in a moment. Be patient and be a bit maladjusted.
I think we're all maladjusted now.
Sorry, friends, believe it or not, my house internet just went down in the middle of everything. So I apologize. I'm using my phone. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Everybody looks like you're frozen, but you can still hear me, huh?
We're here, Gary. We're here.
Yeah, just fine, just fine.
Okay.
We can hear you perfectly.
We only got the beginning of maladjusted, however.
All right, I'm going to play it again, but let me share my screen. Are you able to?
Oh, he's
Not
frozen.
yet.
And see if this works. Are you able to see it?
No, now
Not
you're
yet.
frozen again.
No,
Unfrozen.
no, you're back. No, we don't see anything. There we go.
There it is.
Yep,
yeah, there it is.
Okay, so, all right, let's see if it'll play. Can you?
Can't hear it. We can see the words, but we can't hear it.
Okay. All right, hold on. I'm going to stop. Can you see it now? Are you able to see it?
We are. We
Yes.
are.
Which I'm proud to be maladjusted, and which I call upon you to be maladjusted. I never intend to adjust myself to the evils of segregation and the crippling effects of discrimination. I never intend to become adjusted to the madness of militarism and the self-defeating effects of physical violence. This evening I call upon you to be maladjusted to all of these things. For you see, it may be that the salvation of our world lies in the hands of the maladjusted. I call upon you to be maladjusted. Yes, as maladjusted as Amos, who in the midst of the tragic injustices of his day could cry out in terms that echo across the generations, "Let judgment run down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream." As maladjusted as Lincoln, who had the vision to see that this nation could not exist half slave and half free. As maladjusted as Jefferson, who in the midst of an age amazingly adjusted to slavery could cry out in terms lifted to cosmic proportion, "All men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
You able to hear all of that?
Yes.
Good. So I'm as I said, I'm apologizing because for some reason my home internet went out, and I am now connected through my phone through mobile tethering. So I don't have quite the same power that I had. I'm skipping ahead since we lost a few minutes and I'm way over, but I'm going to end by just saying that we also are currently embarking upon preparing for material for future generations who will write history of our own time. And one of the most important elements of this initiative is that we're trying hard to collect material on the first earliest women in the rabbinate and in the cantorate. And one of the great heroes for women in the rabbinate is this woman, Rabbi Regina Yonas, who is the first woman in modern Jewish history to actually become a rabbi. She was a German woman who studied parallel institution to the Hebrew Union College in Berlin. It was called the Hochschule, and she was did everything to become a rabbi. She completed every requirement, but she was only given in the year 1930 a teaching degree. She was not given the title rabbi. However, during the Nazi regime, when the German community was decimated, she was ordained by 3 other colleagues, rabbis, and she functioned as a rabbi and was called a rabbi. And I'm going to prove that to you in a minute. And this poor woman was taken to Theresienstadt in 1941. And then in 1942, she was taken from there to Auschwitz and she was murdered. And thankfully, we have her records. She left her records at the Jewish community before she was deported. And we have quite a number of them. And they exist in Berlin, and the only copies of her records are at the American Jewish Archives in Cincinnati. Just to prove to you, this is from the archives of Theresienstadt, where she delivered a lecture. And there you can see that she is referred to here as Rabbiners, Regina Yonas. And these are the themes that she would talk on that day. Well, we have a lot of interesting information on the pioneering women rabbis. This is Rabbi Sandy Sasso, the first woman ordained by the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in 1960. She was ordained in 1974, and this is how she looked as a young student. And she received a letter while she was studying because they did an article on her in the New York Times. And I want you to read this article. This woman was moved to write this letter to Rabbi Sasso. The letter now exists in the American Jewish Archives. And this is written just as she was beginning her studies. Remember, she's 4 years away from becoming a rabbi. And look at what this woman writes to student Rabbi Sasso. I'm starting on the second to last paragraph. You look pretty enough in the picture, and being Jewish, I'm just prejudiced enough to figure that you are smart too. So I'm hoping you will do a very great deal of studying, and somewhere along the line, you will find out that you are pursuing the wrong goal, and that you might just back up and end up right on track after all. I sincerely hope so. Ordinarily, I would sign off by wishing you much success, but this time I will refrain. In fact, frankly, I hope you don't make it for your sake, mine, and everyone else's. Why is it important for us to preserve such a letter? It's crucial because the 50% of our classes today who are women have no idea the struggle and the challenges and the difficulties that the pioneers had to face, and it's documents of this sort that will preserve it. Now, I would normally play, Rabbi Serkman has heard me play Rabbi Sally Present. This is one of my favorite pictures of her as a student in Cincinnati. She's about to celebrate her 50th anniversary of her ordination, but she's standing right in front of the American Jewish Archives. I like this picture, but I see that we've really used up a lot of time, and I lost a few minutes because of technology. So I'm going.
Rabbi, you have time to play it if you want. It's fine with me. It's a great clip.
Well, you want to hear Sally's piece?
Believe me, the 60 or so of us on, I guarantee it's short and it's powerful.
All right. So here, let me bring it up. Just a minute. I'm going to have to switch for just a minute, and we'll take care of it. Let me see if this is it. Let me see.
For their counseling, is that true? Sometimes.
Okay, so here, hold on one second. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Rabbi asked me to show you this, so I'll show you this first. Can you all see that letter now? Okay, so I'll play this. This is not quite yet Sally. This is Rabbi Sasso. You'll enjoy this. I'm just going to play it, and you'll see what it is.
For
You
their
able to hear
counseling,
it?
is that true? Sometimes.
Yeah.
And you can do this thing in their home?
Sometimes. Yes.
This is one aspect of their work which is involved with counseling, but only one aspect.
But only one aspect. When you do your service, do you ever have to use any equipment?
Sometimes.
When the people have availed themselves of the service, do they feel better?
We hope so.
Mentally?
Perhaps.
Physically?
Doubtful.
No.
3 down and 7 to go, Alan.
Is what you do, does that have anything to do with religion of any kind?
Yes.
Is your title Reverend?
No.
No.
Oh,
26 to go,
Are you
Arlene.
rabbis?
They are rabbis. Sandy and Dennis were both just ordained and became the first husband and wife rabbis in the 5,734-year history of Judaism.
Imagine.
The first ones. That's amazing. How did you both decide to do that?
Separately, we met at the rabbinical college.
And were married while you were there or after you got
After
out?
our first year. It's a 5-year program.
Now, do you preach together? Do you have you work at the same congregation?
We have separate congregations in New York City, and
Mine is in Great Neck.
I'm just stunned. You know,
What did the congregation think of a woman like,
Well, my congregation is very unique and is very accepting of a woman, but there are definitely congregations that would not hire a woman rabbi.
That's amazing because it's such a male-oriented religion. It really is, in terms of, certainly in terms
I
of
would say
preachers.
most Western religions are, yeah.
It's really fascinating. Do you enjoy it?
Very much.
I just think it's terrific and fascinating,
How long has it
and we
been?
have to end the program. Goodbye, everybody. We'll tell you about it next time if we can. Goodbye. That's really marvelous. This is Get
So Sandy always tells me she hates when I play this because she doesn't like the outfit that she's in. But that was, I guess, What's My Lines? They were also on To Tell the Truth, is the couple. So this is really remarkable when you see stuff like this. But let me pull up for you, friends, what it was that the rabbi wanted me to show you. This
Realize, Gary, that in this year of discovering ourselves, we tried to get actually Sally Priesand, and instead we had Cantor Barbara Osfeld, the first cantor ordained, but we may still have Rabbi Priesand towards the end of the year.
Well, that would be wonderful. I'm glad you had Sandy, and they've been in Indianapolis, the entire time, almost their entire career. So let us see if I can pull this up. Let's see. Okay, here we go. All right, so let me introduce this for you, and I promise I'll bring us to an end after this. So this clip was made in the year 1975. Sally was ordained in 1972. And in 1975, the Hebrew Union College was celebrating the 100th anniversary of its founding in Cincinnati. And there was a big Central Conference of American Rabbis convention held at that celebration. And the topic for one seminar was the future of the rabbinate. And they invited 5 rabbis to speak, and Sally, 3 years into the rabbinate, was asked to speak, and she was in front of 500 male rabbis. She was the only woman. And she tells the story, and if you come, she comes to the temple, you should ask her about this. She says that as they went through all the speakers, she was the last one, and they forgot to introduce her. They were starting to close the program down without introducing her. And then they said, oh, wait, hold on. There's one more speaker. And so she was then called up, and she delivers a speech which was recorded. And I'm giving you just 2 minutes of that speech. Listen to what she says. She's probably 30 years old. There's not a woman in the room. And listen to what she says.
The rabbinate has always been an exclusive, elite male club. When I was ordained 3 years ago, I had reason to believe that basic religious equality, granted to women, at least on paper, since the early days of our movement, was at last to become a reality. I have questioned that assumption many times in recent months. My questioning occurs when I venture outside of my own synagogue, particularly when I come to conventions such as this. Sunday night, I heard one of our speakers refer to rabbis as sons of Israel, and I shuddered. Yesterday, I was present when the list of our new members was read. One name among them belonged to the second woman ordained by our movement, and yet our speaker began the list of names by saying, "The following men have been elected to membership." This morning I worshiped at the college chapel and prayed along with you that the perpetual light might cast its radiance into the lives of all men, that our sons might be taught by the Lord, and that he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, might also bless those who faithfully devote themselves to the community together with all of their brothers. I would like to believe that you do not intentionally deny my existence as a rabbi and as a woman, but sometimes you make that very difficult for me.
You know, I had the privilege on Friday night of listening to Rabbi Frankel lead such beautiful services at the congregation. If we don't preserve documents like this, not just letters, like the letter I showed you to Rabbi Sasso, not just pictures like the picture of Rabbi Regina Jonas, not just recordings like what I showed you of Rabbi Wise, all of these are the elements, the building blocks of helping us to recreate the story. Rabbi Frankel, these are her predecessors, and she's able to do what she can do today because of those who came before her. And to listen to Rabbi Prezend have to say that so many years ago, all by herself, is very important, that somebody preserve this and make it possible for future generations to remember and to learn from whence we have come. Finally, we ought to end with the words of Dr. Marcus. In 1968, Dr. Marcus was 72 years old, and one of the faculty members of the Hebrew Union College sat down and did an interview with him. That faculty member is now also deceased. His name was Stanley Chiat, and Dr. Chiat was a very fine historian himself. And he interviewed Dr. Marcus for about an hour. And it's a fascinating 1968, fascinating interview. At the very end, Dr. Marcus talks about the college, and he talks about what I showed you, how the college began in the vestry room of a little synagogue and what it's become. So the last thing I'm showing you this morning is this video of Dr. Marcus, so you can hear the founder of the archives, the man who, without him, everything I showed you would not have been possible. And let him have the final word this morning.
So you see that there's been a tremendous growth even in my time, since we had from the time we had a group of about 12, we had a group of about 50 students all told, who were taught around seminar tables with it was all a very small number of people with a small library, all in the compass of about a half a dozen or a dozen rooms. Well, out of that small little complex has not only come this great college of today, but has come some very remarkable men, like the first class, the class of '83, Krauskopf, and Berkowitz and Philipson, who were really giants. It is amazing what you can do and what an institution can produce if you have the quality and you have the spirit and you have the leadership.
Well, I like that line. It's amazing what you can do if you have the quality and if you have the spirit and if you have the leadership. Dr. Marcus had all of that, and we were able to, I'm really fortunate and feel grateful to have opportunity to be with you and share some of it with you. Just remember that all that we do, everything that we accomplish, we're trying to keep a record of. I told Rabbi Serkman, for example, that we're collecting all of the recordings that have been made during the High Holy Day services. We're trying to preserve them so that when people study this period in COVID years from now, they'll actually be able to see and experience what it was that we have been going through. And rabbi sermons, I've written to the rabbis. I want to know what they said when after January 6th on the insurrection, what their comments were. All of these things will be preserved in the American Jewish Archives. And you, friends, by being members of this congregation and being a part of this community, have every right to take pride in this great institution, the Hebrew Union College and the American Jewish Archives, which is world renowned. And people from all over the world depend upon the preservation of these great resources. So Larry and Rabbi Serkman and all of you who stayed on so long, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you.
Rabbi Zola, I just have to interrupt by saying, if anything can dispel the wintry mix outside, it's the warmth of your heart and the passion of your spirit. There's nobody who brings history to life like you. You are a gift to the Jewish people.
Thank you. I'm going to paraphrase for all of you. I'm going to paraphrase the famous words of Colonel William Prescott, the great hero of the Battle of Bunker Hill. Everybody knows his famous line. He said, "Don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes." So I'm going to end by saying, I'm pray to the good Lord that it won't be long before I'll be able to see the whites of all of your eyes face to face.
Thank you, Rabbi Zola.
Thank you.
For being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Terrific.
Come and visit.
Thank you very much. Fascinating talk.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yasher Koach.
Sei gesund.
Thank you. You too. Stay well. Thank you. Enjoy the day.